If you know my testimony, you'll be on your feet shouting to Aaron. How will you shout? You see, Pastor Jerry, we were married in 2014. It's been from one disappointment to the other, childbirth-wise. And then 2020, we relocated to the UK. We've come from the UK to give this testimony. So a friend of mine sent this link to me in November 2020, thereabout. But since we are praying family, I was like, let's continue with our prayers. But someone forwarded it to my wife. And then one of those mornings, I was about going to shower. And she started playing it. And the Spirit of God ministered to me and said, pray with that man. That was how I started praying with NSPPD. My wife was confirmed pregnant again in the UK, and we were excited and very happy. 16 weeks into the pregnancy, she started spotting. 18 weeks into the pregnancy, she started bleeding. I mean active bleeding. The pictures are gory, so I'll save everyone that gory side. We're talking about UK hospitals where you can think of the best care. They checked to find the source of bleeding. They could not find it. As I speak to you, after the child's birth, the placenta was sent to researchers to research to know where the bleeding came from. They have not found it till date. That is the kind of miracle I'm going to tell you, Pastor Jerry. So 23 weeks, 2 days, my baby was born. 23 weeks, 2 days. And as at the time he was born, he was the second youngest neonate to survive in the UK. Before this time, we've had 2 miscarriages. Second youngest preterm baby in the UK to survive. Shortly after his delivery, they had to do a CPR, which indicates that he was in between life and death. CPR moved him to NICU and the journey began. But before then, God gave a word. In the midst of bleeding and all that complications.
There is a woman under the sound of my voice. You have been bleeding heavily. You are bleeding even clots of blood. You are bleeding even clots of blood. Thus saith the Lord, you will not lose that pregnancy. You will not lose that pregnancy.
We held on to God. We got transferred from our hospital to a more advanced hospital, Royal Preston Hospital. Those in the UK would know it. And he had care. At some point, he started deteriorating again. The numbers were dropping. All the signs of living signs were dropping. They said, we've checked everything. We don't really understand what's happening. We're going to transfer him again. So they transferred him to Liverpool Women's Hospital. I think 6 hours after we arrived, they diagnosed him of necrotizing enterocolitis, which is obstruction of the small intestine. It was about 11.4 cm obstruction. And so they put him into theater and corrected that. But that's not the case. God's hand was in it, because before we were transferred to Liverpool Women's Hospital, he had bleeding in bilateral lobes of his brain. He had a whole lot of things going on. He had neonatal retinopathy, he had hole in the heart, and he had chronic lung disease, chronic bone disease, and he had issues with his liver and his kidney. So the journey continued, and God started sending messages through his servant, Pastor Jerry. One of those mornings we were praying, please pardon me, let me bring it. A day after my child was delivered, on the 6th of May, he was born on the 5th of May. The 6th of May, Pastor Jerry declared, he said, a baby will not be brought back to you as a corpse.
Your child will not be brought back to you as a corpse.
That was when I said, God's hand is in it. He will never die, but he will live. Because of the many complications that he had, at some point the doctors called me for a meeting. As medical personnel, we know when you're called for a meeting, then you should expect, that something terrible, negative is going to happen. And they said, look, we're going to do all we can, but everything that happens to neonates that gives us concern as professionals, I'm talking about a consultant who's been a consultant for 23 years in neonatology. He said, everything that gives us concern about preterm babies have happened to your son and more. So let us take every day as it comes. We're not promising anything, and we don't want you to expect anything. And I told the man, I said, do what you can do, or you have to do as a medical personnel. The ones you cannot do, his father will fix it. And he looked at me and was pondering how his father was going to fix it. He asked me, are you a medical doctor? I said, I am talking about the father that created him. He will fix it. I said, he will fix it. 2 days after, they scanned his brain again. The bleeding in the brain, the bilateral lobe bleeding had disappeared. They did a repeated scan a day after that. They were not finding the bleeding again. It had completely gone. They kept doing it again, because before they put it down in their notes to say, there's no more bleeding in the brain, when they had already planned for neurosurgeons to put a stent in to drain it. They have to be coincide and sure. They did scans and scans and scans and scans and scans. It was not found. So at Liverpool Women's Hospital, when we arrived there, they realized that, neonatal retinopathy is no more there. We are not expecting him to have any problem with his sight. Just leave him. Let him run around his father's house. Hallelujah. So Pastor Jerry, the journey continued, and at some point when he was discharged, after 6 months in NICU, we planned a discharge. And the doctors invited me for a meeting and said, okay, a pre-discharge meeting. They said, okay, with all the things that have been happening, with all the things he's had, all the complications and everything, he might not be able to walk. That's why I say put him down. Let him run around his father's house. He's in his father's house. Put him down. Let him run around his father's house. Hallelujah. Aaron. Pastor Jerry, there were several declarations you made at the time. I will just, for the sake of time, I'll just tell us a few that I can remember. You know, on the 24th of May, you declared, one eye into the prayer, you said, and you declared your effort will not be in vain.
Your labor will not be in vain. Oh. Your labor will not be in vain. Oh. Your labor will not be in vain.
Because that declaration was my word. I was broken in my spirit. I fasted and I cried. And my point of call to God was, do not let my efforts be in vain. Because it was a very, very stressful journey, emotionally, mentally, and physically. It was a stressful journey. And you declared that word, and I said, Pastor Jerry is here. He's here in this hospital. Nothing evil will happen. Hallelujah. 18th of August, Mercy Prayer, 7 hours, 20 minutes. You said you've been asking for one thing.
There are people under the sound of my voice that are saying, Lord, there is one thing. There's one thing you've been asking of the Lord. There is one thing.
Pastor Jerry, nothing has gone wrong. Pre-discharge meeting that we had, the doctor said, oh, because he's got chronic bone disease, he's got chronic lung disease, he's got, a lot of things, so we're not expecting him to come off oxygen maybe for a very long time. We expect he might be using oxygen till maybe he's adult or something. He's going to be feeding through NG tube for a long time, and we don't expect him to walk. If he's going to walk, he might be from 7 years old and above, and he might be on a wheelchair for a very long time or for life. So I told the doctor, I said, do you know Eroy? Do you know Eroy? Pastor Jerry, they did not understand. I told the man, I said, I know you've been practicing for 23 years as a consultant, but my son will be a point where you start another research again. When he was 2 and he was already running around, I took him back to the consultant. I said, he's already running. Start another research. Error! Pastor Jerry, today, the bleeding in the brain has disappeared. The neonatal retinopathy has disappeared. The chronic bone disease has disappeared. The chronic lung disease has disappeared. His organs are fine. He just graduated from nursery and is going into preschool next September. We are here to glorify the name of this God. The God that doeth wonders without numbers. The God that doeth what men think is impossible. Aaron! Aaron! Pastor Jerry, we are here to give this God all the glory and all the honor and all the adoration. Thank you very much, Pastor Jerry, for standing in the gap. Thank you for praying at night and in the day for us. God bless you richly. Please behold your son. Hold him with your hands. Touch him. Give me a touch, Pastor Jerry. Thank you very much. God bless you. Aaron!